You know what? My ex was better in bed. She didn't scream it. That's the part that stuck with me. She just said it, flat, like she was reading a grocery list. No rage, no tears, no heat, just cold steel in her voice. And the way her eyes flicked at me, like she was gauging the damage, waiting for the hit to land. It did. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even blink. Just stood there in the kitchen, hands still damp from washing the damn dishes, and stared at her like I'd just heard the last words of a eulogy, ours. Then I walked over to the hook by the door, took my keys, grabbed my jacket, and left. No dramatic exit, no slam, just the sound of the door clicking shut behind me. I think that unnerved her more than anything. She must have thought I'd be back, that it was one of those walk it off moments, that I'd huff and puff for a few hours, then come crawling into bed muttering some sarcastic comment like I always did. But the thing is, I didn't even feel angry, not in the way she expected. What I felt was done, like something inside me had quietly rolled over and died, and all that was left was a kind of calm I hadn't known I was capable of. When you hit a dog too many times, it stops barking. By the time the sun came up, I was gone. Phone turned off, accounts locked, her last text still unread. Are you serious? She wandered the apartment that morning, probably rehearsing some half-hearted apology, some gaslighty little jab like, you know I didn't mean it, it was just a stupid fight. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Every fight became a test, and I was tired of failing ones I never signed up for. Look, if you've gotten this far into my story, chances are you felt that kind of silence. Not the quiet that fills a room, but the kind that fills your chest. That hollow weight when you realize the person you built a life with doesn't care about demolishing it in one sentence. And more than 97% of you listening right now haven't hit that subscribe button. Do it. Not because it feeds an algorithm, but because it tells the team behind this that we're not alone in this, that our stories matter, yours included. Back to it. She told her friends I was overreacting, said I was too sensitive, that men always make it about their egos. But let's get real. Imagine if the roles were reversed. If I'd told her my ex had a tighter body, think she'd have stayed silent, smiled it off? Please. What she didn't realize is I wasn't leaving the argument. I was leaving her. And not just emotionally. I mean really leaving. That night wasn't a pause. It was an extraction. Quiet, methodical, pre-planned more than she'd ever know. Because here's the twist. That comment? It wasn't out of nowhere. It was just the final straw. The last crack in a dam I'd been patching for years with duct tape and denial. I'd ignored the cold shoulders, the working late excuses, the half-hearted intimacy, the growing pile of unopened mail she never bothered to look at. I wasn't stupid. I was just exhausted, and she mistook exhaustion for complacency. She thought I'd be back by Monday. By Monday, my name was off our lease. By Wednesday, I was 2 states away, sleeping in a furnished rental under a different last name, paid in advance through a shell LLC I'd opened 8 months prior, just in case. Because when a man leaves without slamming the door, he's not running. He's already arrived somewhere else, quietly, prepared. The cruelest thing wasn't the insult. It was how easily I let go. She started with texts, short ones, casual. Are you coming back tonight? Okay, I'm sorry, that was a low blow. Can we just talk? By the 5th message, she added a sad emoji. That was supposed to do the heavy lifting. I didn't answer. The next morning, her messages came faster, desperate, panicked. Where are you? Then, please. This isn't funny. Then, are you alive? The calls started after lunch. 10 the first day, 22 the second. The third day she tried email, 2 from her personal, 1 from work. The subject lines looked like a timeline of unraveling. Just talk to me. Seriously, I'm sorry. Why are you doing this? No response. Nothing bounced. Just silence. By the end of the week, she drove to my office, except it wasn't my office anymore. My name was off the door. My desk cleared. The receptionist blinked at her and said, "Oh, he left last week. I thought he was taking a sabbatical." She didn't correct her, just stood there with her mouth half open, holding the coffee she probably thought would soften me. She asked for my forwarding address. They didn't have one. She asked for my emergency contact. That was the best part. I'd changed it months ago, not to family, not to anyone she knew, just a lawyer's firm downtown. She walked out into the parking lot, trying to call again, straight to voicemail, and that's when it started to dawn on her. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a man storming off to a hotel for the weekend to make her appreciate him more. I had left the building, the job, and the whole damn zip code on purpose. She called my brother. He answered with a sigh. He said you might call, he told her. Where is he? He doesn't want you to know. I just need to talk to him. You already did. Click. By the second week, she tried the mutual friends. Casual first, then bold. Drinks with Angela, coffee with Eric, but the smiles were fake, the sympathy thinner than paper. I haven't heard from him, honestly. Maybe he's just working through stuff. Yeah, he's always been internal. I'm sure he just needs space. What they didn't say, but she started to hear, was that they had heard from me, just not about her. Photos of a lake, a dog I'd adopted, a new watch, a comment on someone's post about quiet mornings and black coffee. They were covering for me, because they understood something she didn't. When a man finally leaves, he doesn't pack bags. He deletes a life. Her mother came over eventually, brought soup, like that would solve it, sat down and asked the question no one else would. What exactly did you say to him? That's when the crack really started to show. She said it wasn't a big deal, said it was just a fight, that she didn't mean it, that people say all kinds of things when they're angry. Her mother didn't blink, just stirred the soup and muttered, "Men remember different things than we do." Later, her best friend asked it straight, "What did you say that night?" And for once, she didn't have a witty reply. No sarcasm, no spin, just silence. Because that was the moment she realized the truth wasn't in what she said. It was in how I left. The stillness, the clean exit, the void I left behind wasn't accidental. I hadn't stormed out. I'd planned my absence. No receipts, no trail, not a single credit card transaction in 3 weeks, not a single tagged post, not a ping from Find My iPhone, not even a parking ticket. I didn't just vanish, I erased myself. Because people like her expect storms. They expect rage, slamming doors, screaming matches, shattered plates, and ultimatums. They prepare for those. They win those. But they don't know what to do with silence. And that terrified her more than any fight ever could. 2 weeks later, she woke up nauseous. Not the kind that fades after bad takeout, but the deep, dizzy kind that makes the air feel too thick to breathe. She sat on the edge of the bed, my side still empty, and felt the world tilt slightly. It had been 14 days since I walked out, 14 days of radio silence, of her pacing through every room, pretending the walls would whisper something back. At first, she thought it was stress. Then the calendar betrayed her. She counted, frowned, counted again. Her heart started thudding hard enough to drown out everything else. She went to the pharmacy down the street wearing sunglasses and a hoodie, as if shame needed disguises. Bought 2 boxes, just to be sure. The cashier smiled politely. She couldn't even look her in the eye. Back home, she set one test on the counter, stared at it like it was wired to explode. She couldn't even wait the full 2 minutes. The line showed up early. Then the second one confirmed it, 2 clean blue lines. She didn't scream or cry, just sat there, the stick still trembling in her hand, whispering, "No, no, no." Then she laughed once, dry, brittle. "Of course, now." She called my number first, straight to voicemail, then again, and again, until the automated voice said the words that made her drop the phone. "This number is no longer in service." She tried the work line, disconnected. The email bounced. She even called the apartment management office, pretending to be my sister. "He doesn't live here anymore," the woman said flatly. "Our system shows the lease was terminated." Her pulse raced. She opened her contacts and scrolled until she reached my brother's name, hesitated, pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Hello? Hey, it's me." A pause, then a quiet, measured, "Yeah." "Please," she said, voice shaking. "I need to talk to him. It's important. I think I might be pregnant." He sighed, long and heavy. "He said you'd say something like this." "What? No, listen to me. I'm not lying." "I'm sure you're not. But he told me if you ever called, I should tell you one thing." Her breath caught. "What?" "He's fine. He doesn't want to be found." Click. She sat there, phone still against her ear, listening to the empty static like it might change its mind. That night, she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The test lay on the nightstand beside her, mocking her with its quiet certainty. She turned on the TV just for noise, but every commercial seemed to twist the knife deeper. Baby food, family cars, diaper ads. The irony was cruel. By morning, she was calling everyone. Her old college roommate, a cousin of mine, even a guy from my gym whose number she found in an old message thread. All of them said the same thing. "Haven't heard from him." Some added awkwardly, "He seems different lately, happier." That last word hit her like a slap. She checked my social media. Gone. Deleted, not deactivated. Every photo of us, erased. The one where we were laughing in the rain, gone. The anniversary post she once bragged about to her friends, vanished. It was like I'd scrubbed history clean. And that's when panic set in. Real panic. The kind that doesn't let you sit still. She started retracing everything. The bank accounts, mine were closed, joint utilities transferred, even the storage unit we once rented together, emptied. She called, pretending to confirm the billing. No, the clerk said. That account's been closed for months. Months, that word stuck. Months, meaning I'd started preparing long before that fight. The nausea hit again, but this time it wasn't just physical. It was realization sinking in. She looked at the test one last time and whispered, "You really planned this, didn't you?" Because deep down, she finally understood something most people never do. When someone leaves without saying goodbye, it's not impulsive. It's rehearsed. And now, she had something she couldn't hide, couldn't explain, couldn't share with anyone, least of all the man who'd vanished so cleanly he might as well have been a ghost. Except ghosts sometimes leave footprints, and she was about to start following them, whether he wanted her to or not. She cracked open his old laptop like it was a tomb, covered in dust, still resting in the closet where he left it, if you could call it leaving. No charger, of course, took that with him. She found a compatible one and waited for it to come alive, heartbeat pounding like it was some kind of bomb. The login screen blinked. She tried his birthday, their anniversary, the dog's name, nothing. After 3 wrong attempts, it locked her out for 24 hours. She stared at the screen like it had just spit in her face, so she pivoted, pulled up the last bank statement they'd received by mail, one of the few that hadn't gone paperless. It was from 6 weeks before the fight. She called the number on the back, put on her concerned wife voice, said she was helping her husband with taxes. "Oh, that account is closed," the rep said cheerfully. "He moved his funds and closed it 2 months ago." "Where did he move them to?" "I'm sorry, I can't disclose." Click. She tried another, an old credit card they used to use for groceries. Closed. Another, his car insurance, canceled. Even the Spotify family plan was gone. The account didn't just vanish, it had been strategically dismantled. Then she remembered the shared Google Drive. Opened it, empty. No photos, no spreadsheets, not even the petty little budgeting doc they argued about once a month. Her shared folder access had been revoked. She checked the shared calendar, deleted, tried logging into his email, deactivated. She texted her best friend Natalie. "He's wiped everything, every account, even old photos, nothing's left." Natalie sent back a single line. "We're going to find something." They spent the rest of the afternoon digging through digital fragments like archaeologists looking for bones. Found a random parking ticket he'd received last year. It had a license plate. Natalie ran it through a friend at the DMV. "No record under his name," she said later that evening. "Car's been retitled." They finally got a hit searching short-term property records in nearby counties. One address popped up, an apartment in a smaller city about 3 hours away, lease under a company called Heartline Resources LLC. Sounded fake. She didn't care. She grabbed her keys, filled up the tank, and drove. 3 hours and 24 minutes later, she pulled into a quiet complex with gravel parking, a faded pool, and too many bushes trimmed into useless shapes. She walked into the leasing office, trying not to look like she hadn't slept in 2 days. "Hi, I'm looking for someone who might have rented a unit here recently, under Heartline Resources?" she asked, casual. Too casual. The woman behind the desk squinted at the screen. "Yeah, that was Unit 302, rented short-term, lease ended last week." "Do you have a forwarding address?" The woman smiled, apologetic. "It was a corporate rental. We just dealt with their rep. He turned in the keys by mail." She stood there for a beat. "Can I at least see the unit?" The woman paused. "It's being cleaned right now," she said, "please." 5 minutes later, she stood in the middle of a completely empty living room. Hardwood floor, beige walls, windows cracked open to let out the chemical tang of disinfectant. The place smelled like bleach and finality. There was nothing personal, no trash left behind, no scuff marks on the floor, no faint smell of his cologne, just a shallow dent in the carpet where a chair once stood. She checked the drawers, empty, opened the closet, nothing. Bathroom cabinets bare, even the fridge was unplugged, no crumbs, no clothes hanger, not a single note. It wasn't just clean, it was erased. She stood in the silence, arms crossed, and tried to breathe. The window faced a parking lot. She half expected to see his car pull in, for him to appear in the doorway and ask why she was here, but the door never opened. She finally asked herself the question she'd been too afraid to face since the night he left. Did I ever actually know him? Because this wasn't ghosting. This was strategy, preparation, precision. He hadn't left in anger. He'd left like someone evacuating a compromised building, calmly, efficiently, and without warning. She drove back that night in silence, headlights cutting through the dark, empty highway, belly tight with the weight of a future she hadn't planned for. When she got home, she opened her freezer and stood there letting the cold hit her face like it might numb the panic. He hadn't just disappeared. He'd made sure she couldn't even chase. The first letter arrived on a Wednesday, tucked between a coupon flyer and a dental bill. Plain white envelope, no return address. But she knew before she even tore the edge open. Inside, a formal letter from a law firm she didn't recognize. Typed, sterile, precise. This letter serves as confirmation that Mr. ______ has relinquished all claims and interest in the jointly owned vehicle registered under license plate _______. The title has been fully transferred to your name. Please find enclosed the notarized form for DMV submission. No note, no explanation, no signature beyond the printed name of a legal assistant she'd never heard of. She didn't know whether to feel relieved or insulted, maybe both. She held the paper over the sink, stared at it for a while, and then folded it neatly and slid it back into the envelope. She put it in the drawer by the fridge, the one with rubber bands, takeout menus, and expired coupons. That drawer felt appropriate. 3 days later came the second envelope, thicker, from the same firm. This one was the apartment. Per Mr. 8's instructions, all rights to the lease and contents therein have been forfeited. Attached is a quitclaim agreement concerning any items within the property. Mr. ______ has requested no further contact regarding these matters. Again, no demands, no accusations, just clinical closure. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where he once fixed her grandmother's wobbly chair, and placed the envelope beside her untouched lunch. He wasn't fighting her. He wasn't retaliating. He was just gone, systematically, thoughtfully. She called the law firm finally, just to hear someone say his name out loud. "Thank you for calling Prescott, Lang & Weaver," said a robotic voice. "For family law, press 2. She pressed 2, waited. "Prescott, Lang & Weaver, this is Melissa." "Hi," she cleared her throat. I received documents from your office regarding property relinquishment." "Yes, can I have the case number?" She read it off the letter. Pause. Typing. "Yes, that's been finalized. All filings have been processed. No further action is needed on your end." Can I leave a message for him?" A longer pause. "Mr. _______ has instructed that we do not relay messages of a personal nature." Click. She threw the phone across the couch and screamed. Finally, rage, actual rage boiled up in her chest and she let it out. A pillow went flying. A framed photo hit the floor. Her reflection in the microwave looked pathetic. The man who used to argue with her about Thai takeout portions had now ghosted her through legalese. She checked her email. Nothing. Not a single "Are you okay?" Not a snide "Told you so." Not even a cold goodbye. Just this eerie, structured trail of disappearing acts. The next week, she received a notification that the joint utilities were transferred to her name. Then the streaming services. Password changed. Then their shared calendar. Gone. Even the stupid grocery list app they used together. Wiped. Her access revoked. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, one slice of life at a time. Her name disappeared from the emergency contact at her own doctor's office. She found out when they asked to confirm. That's when she really broke. She had built a life with someone who knew exactly how to erase himself from it. She tried to spin it at first, told her mom, "He's just being dramatic." Told Natalie, "It's his pride." But every envelope, every change of name, every severed login told a different story. This wasn't punishment. This was precision. No flames, no explosions. Just quiet dismantling, like someone disassembling a bomb before it ever went off. One night she opened her drawer of old receipts, half hoping to find a scribbled note from him, a post-it, a signature, something, anything, left behind. There wasn't. All she found was an old grocery list in her handwriting. It read, "Eggs, laundry detergent, sriracha. Talk to him tonight." She remembered that night. She never did. And now there was no one left to talk to. She didn't even want to go to the pharmacy. The nausea had come back, stronger now. the kind that coils behind your ribs and makes your spine ache. The prenatal vitamins sat untouched on her bathroom shelf. Something about buying them felt like giving up, like signing her name at the bottom of a letter she never meant to send. She kept her hood up, hair pulled back, sunglasses on, not for anyone else, for herself, to feel less visible, less exposed. She stood in line, zoning out to the dull hum of fluorescent lights and bad 80s pop playing too low to be enjoyable. And then, just ahead of her in the allergy meds aisle, a figure. Same height, same slope of the shoulders, same way of shifting his weight from left foot to right like he was always half listening to music in his head. Her breath caught. He turned. It wasn't him. The man smiled politely, unaware that her stomach had just dropped into her knees. She barely made it outside before the tears started. Silent, fast, no sobs, just the kind of tears that leak from the place disappointment lives. She sat in her car, gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles blanched. The vitamin bottle rolled off the passenger seat, hit the floor mat, and stayed there. She didn't go home, just drove in circles, past the park they used to walk through, past the diner they used to argue in, past the little shop where he bought her that stupid ceramic elephant she said she hated but secretly loved. She didn't remember driving back, only that she ended up parked outside her building as the streetlights flickered on like judgmental little stars. Her phone buzzed. Natalie. She almost didn't answer, but something in her gut said pick up. Hey, Natalie said, breathless. I wasn't gonna send this, but I think you should see it. What? Just check your texts, right now. The image came through as she was still asking what am I looking at. It was a screenshot, a Facebook post, blurry, taken at sunset. A beach, warm tones, driftwood, two figures barely in focus. One sitting in a hammock, the other mid-laugh, cropped at the edge. Caption, best decision I ever made. Her heart pounded. She zoomed in, fingers trembling. The man in the hammock had his face half covered by the brim of a hat. But the hand, God, the hand, resting against his leg. She knew that watch. Matte black with a faint scratch across the band from the time he dropped it between the porch planks. She had begged him to replace it. He said no, said it had character now. There it was, same watch, same wrist, same freckle at the base of his thumb. She stared at it for 10 minutes, zoomed in, zoomed out, like the photo would suddenly speak if she looked long enough. It didn't. She wanted to throw the phone, but instead she just closed her eyes and let her head fall against the seat. Natalie texted again. I think he's in Southport. My cousin lives there. Said she saw him once, alone at a bookstore, talking to the owner about starting fresh. She didn't reply. She didn't need to, because that photo told her everything. He had moved on, not loudly, not extravagantly, but completely, with that same calm, quiet conviction he always carried, only now it didn't include her. He wasn't angry. He wasn't mourning. He was living. She looked at her reflection in the dark screen of her phone. Puffy eyes, raw cheeks, the pale outline of a woman who used to think she had control. For a flicker of a moment, she imagined driving down to that beach town, just showing up, walking into that bookstore, tapping him on the shoulder. But then what? He'd look at her, maybe nod, maybe not, and she'd see it in his eyes before he even spoke. That she was a closed chapter, an old version, a story already written and shelved. She put the phone face down on the seat and whispered to no one, I thought I was punishing you. But now, she was starting to understand. She wasn't the one left behind. She was the one still standing in the fire, long after he walked out of it. The labor started just after midnight, quiet at first, tight cramps like someone pulling a thread through her spine, but it didn't take long before the pain came in waves strong enough to knock breath from her lungs. She tried to stay calm, timing the contractions like the birthing class videos said, but every 5 minutes turned to 3, and soon she was gripping the sink, biting her lip to keep from screaming. She called no one. There was no one left to call. The cab driver didn't ask questions, just looked at her in the rear view, then at the maternity bag clutched to her chest like a life vest and hit the gas. The nurses were kind. One of them held her hand during the worst of it. But even in that sterile white room with its beeping machines and forced smiles, the absence felt louder than anything else. No hand on her shoulder, no whispered, "You're doing great." No one pacing in the waiting room, no one cutting the cord, just her and the baby, and the knowledge that she was delivering not just a child, but the full consequence of a moment she couldn't take back. The baby came screaming into the world at 3:27 a.m., a tiny red-fisted girl with dark hair and a birthmark just above her ankle. The doctor smiled and said something soft. She didn't hear it. Her chest was too full, her arms too weak. They placed the baby in her arms, and for a second, a flicker, she imagined he'd walk through the door, breathless, apologetic, changed. She even turned her head toward the hallway, half expecting the impossible. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of machines and the steady tick of a wall clock that didn't care what she'd lost. She named the baby Isla, wrote it on the birth certificate with hands that shook. When the nurse asked if she wanted to list a father, she hesitated, then whispered, "Leave it blank." Back home, the apartment looked smaller, colder. The bassinet sat near the window, untouched. She laid Isla down and stared at her face for hours, searching for familiar angles, hidden traits. The curve of a cheek, the shape of the nose. Was it him? She hadn't cried during labor, not once, but that night, she broke. Not just from exhaustion, but from the realization that the man she thought she could reach was no longer real, just a memory, and a painful one at that. Still, she wrote. She pulled out an old notebook, tore a fresh sheet, and wrote the kind of letter you don't write unless you've run out of every other option. She didn't beg, not exactly, but her hands trembled as she asked him to at least see her, to understand, to meet the child who bore half his DNA. She attached a photo, Isla in her arms, eyes barely open, wrapped in the soft pink blanket they'd bought together months before the storm hit. She stared at the photo for 10 minutes before hitting send on the only email that had never bounced. And then she waited. Half a day passed, then the next. No reply, until a knock at the door. She opened it expecting a delivery guy or a neighbor complaining about the baby crying. Instead, it was a courier, clipboard, polite, no emotion. "Signature, please." He handed her a flat envelope, cream-colored, thick, no return address. She signed without asking, closed the door with shaking hands, sat on the couch and stared at it. She knew. Inside, a printed document. No handwriting, just a typed statement, signed and notarized. "I hereby relinquish all parental claims, rights, and responsibilities, present and future, to the child born of her name, delivered on birth date. This document is final and irreversible." His signature sat at the bottom, sharp, clean, cold. No letter, no note, not even a name, just an ending. She read it once, then again. The third time, her fingers went numb and the document slipped from her lap onto the floor like a dead bird. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to hit the wall until it broke, but all she could do was sit there, staring at the tiny crib across the room as Isla whimpered softly in her sleep. This wasn't punishment. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He had made a decision, a complete, legal, surgical decision, and he didn't just sign away the child, he signed away her. There was no next step, no apology, no redemption, just a blank space where a father was supposed to be. The form sat in front of her like a test she already knew she'd fail. "Father's name?" the nurse asked gently, pen poised. She hesitated. The words floated just behind her lips. One syllable could have ended it, but something in her chest clenched too tightly. "Leave it blank," she whispered. The nurse didn't press, just nodded and moved on. She didn't do it out of spite, or pride, or even shame. She did it because the name felt radioactive. Writing it down would have meant he was real, that he belonged in that child's story. And after everything, after the silence, the legal erasure, the cold signature on that lifeless document, he didn't. Not anymore. He had become something else, not a person, not even a memory, a ghost. And she wasn't going to write a ghost into her daughter's life, not on that line, not today. Back home, the apartment was darker than usual. She hadn't opened the blinds in a week. Isla was fussing again, probably hungry, or tired, or maybe she just knew what tension felt like, even this early. She picked her up, pressed her close to her chest, and rocked slowly in the old chair he once assembled. The screws were still slightly crooked. He never quite followed the instructions, said they were suggestions, not rules. Isla's head rested against her shoulder, a tiny warmth against all that cold air. She ran her finger along her daughter's hairline and tried not to fall apart. Her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it. Almost. But then, something told her to look. Just a single message. "I hope she never hears what you said that night." The room didn't spin. It collapsed. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. It hit the floor face down. Isla stirred against her chest, let out a soft whimper. She held her tighter, heart hammering like a fist inside a locked door. He knew, he still knew. All this time she'd wondered if he thought about her, if the silence was a blanket or a punishment. If he'd forgotten, he hadn't. He remembered the words, 6 of them. My ex was better in bed. She hadn't meant them. At least she didn't think she had. But that's what people like her always said, wasn't it? After they've struck, after they've tasted the look on someone's face when it caves in from something sharp and stupid and meant to hurt. She stood there in the middle of the room, shaking, her daughter in her arms, as shame crawled up her throat and squeezed, because what he said wasn't angry, wasn't cruel, it was quiet, almost gentle. I hope she never hears what you said that night. It wasn't a warning, it was a hope that the child, his child, would never inherit the ugliness that poured from her mother's mouth when she thought pain was power. She wanted to reply, to say you don't understand, to scream it was a mistake, but her hands wouldn't move. There was no reply box for that kind of guilt. She sat down slowly, rocking again, this time not for Isla, but for herself, rocking because if she stopped, she might shatter. She wanted to cry. She wanted to go back. She wanted to say something that would undo it all, but instead, she rocked and listened to the tiny, soft breath of a girl who would one day ask where her father was, and all she'd be able to say is, "He didn't want you to carry what I said," and she wouldn't blame him. The email subject line read, "Final request regarding prior domestic affiliation." It landed in her inbox on a Tuesday morning, sandwiched between a coupon from a baby supply store and a passive-aggressive PTA newsletter she never remembered signing up for. She stared at it for a while, unsure if it was real. The sender's name meant nothing, just the name of another law firm, not the same as before, a new one, from a different city, different country actually. Her hands trembled as she clicked it open. "Dear Miss Her Name, this correspondence is on behalf of our client, formerly known as his full name. As of the date of this letter, our client has legally changed his name and residence to a jurisdiction outside the United States. The following document requires your acknowledgement and digital signature, signifying mutual closure of all remaining domestic, legal, and procedural affiliations." Her breath caught on that word, formerly. She clicked the attachment. A legal form, dry and clean like all the others. It wasn't complicated. Just a final, cold cord cutting of any remnants she didn't even know still existed. It addressed things like rights of claim, residual affiliations, intellectual property disputes. Nothing romantic, nothing emotional, just paperwork, businesslike, precise. She scrolled to the bottom and saw it. "Consider this the last page of our book." She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't throw the laptop across the room like the version of herself from a year ago might have. She just stared. He wasn't asking for anything, not forgiveness, not permission, not even acknowledgement. He was closing the door so softly it wouldn't even creak. A name change, a country change, no address, no number, no trail. He didn't hate her. He simply didn't want to be known by her anymore. She closed the laptop and stood up, suddenly aware of how quiet the apartment had become. Isla was asleep in the next room, sprawled across her tiny bed, one arm flung across a stuffed rabbit. She walked over and watched her daughter's chest rise and fall. He would never see this, the curls that had started to grow, the way she tried to say banana, but still called it boo-na-na-na, the tantrums, the giggles, the first time she held a crayon and tried to draw a circle that looked more like a sad potato. None of it would reach him, not because he didn't care, but because he had made the cleanest cut a person can make. He'd erased not just her, but the version of himself that ever belonged to her. And somehow, that was worse than hate. Hate still has heat, still needs a tether. This was windless, weightless, done. She went back to the laptop, opened the file again, scanned it one last time as if hidden somewhere in the margins there might be a sign, some fingerprint of hesitation, a pause, a stray ellipsis. There wasn't, just his new name, typed in a language she didn't recognize. She signed at the bottom, digitally, without ceremony, without hesitation. The cursor blinked at her like a heartbeat. She closed the laptop and sat in silence. Not stunned, not even sad really, just empty. It was over, not with a bang, not even a goodbye, just a sentence, a last page, and she, for the first time, truly understood. Some men don't burn bridges. They sink the whole coastline and walk away without looking back. 3 years later, life looked functional, not fixed, not healed, just arranged enough to keep from collapsing. The apartment was smaller now, more manageable, 2 bedrooms, no unnecessary reminders. The baby things had been swapped for school shoes, crayon-smeared walls, and a calendar cluttered with custody weekend swaps and overdue bills. Except there weren't any custody swaps. Just her. Isla was almost 4, talkative, fierce, unfiltered. She'd started asking questions, not big ones yet, just ones with teeth. Why don't I have a daddy like Ava? Did mine go to space? Will he come back when I'm older? She'd lie gently, half-truths wrapped in lullabies. You have me, she'd say. You have everyone you need. The guilt didn't come in waves anymore. It lived in her skin now, quiet and dry like old paint. Most days, she could go hours without remembering the exact moment she destroyed something sacred. Other days, it arrived like a whisper through the vents, always there, just under the noise. That afternoon, Isla was in the next room playing dress-up, trying to make her stuffed rabbit wear socks. The living room smelled like peanut butter and marker ink. A half-folded pile of laundry sat on the couch, long since abandoned. She opened her laptop to scroll through emails and news feeds she didn't care about. One subject line caught her eye. Inside Europe's quietest luxury retreats. She clicked, not because she cared about retreats or Europe, just muscle memory, something to break the loop. The page loaded slowly, a lifestyle blog filled with curated nonsense. But there it was, the 5th article down. Meet the founder behind one of Portugal's most discreet retreats. She clicked, not expecting anything. The page opened, and everything stopped. There he was, standing on a wooden deck, barefoot, sun behind him, arm draped gently around a woman whose face was turned just slightly out of frame. In his other arm, a small boy, no older than 2, tousled dark hair, wide eyes. The caption beneath read, "A quiet life, far from noise." She stared at the image like it might blink, zoomed in. His smile hadn't changed, still crooked, still subtle, still real. Her eyes dropped to his hand. Ring finger, bare. He hadn't remarried. But the woman, she wasn't just anyone. She could tell by the way they stood, like people who had nothing to prove and nothing to repair, like people who had gotten it right the second time. She sat back slowly, the edges of her vision blurry. Not from tears, just a strange, gentle pressure behind the eyes, like something inside her had finally accepted what the mind had resisted all along. She zoomed in again, looked at the boy's shoes, muddy, a stick clutched in one tiny hand like a sword. His head leaned naturally against the man's shoulder. That little boy would never hear what she said that night, would never hear his father go quiet, would never watch him walk out the door and not come back. He would just know warmth and trust, and stories before bed read in the voice of a man who once stopped speaking because some wounds weren't worth repeating. From the other room, Isla laughed, pure, wild laughter, the kind only children make when the world hasn't broken them yet. She turned away from the screen, closed the laptop slowly, gently, like she was folding a letter that didn't belong to her anymore. She walked into the hallway and watched her daughter spin around in a sparkly cape, arms outstretched, rabbit dragging behind her like a sidekick. Isla looked up and grinned. "Mommy, watch this." "I'm watching," she said, voice steadier than she expected. And then, without meaning to, she whispered, so soft it barely existed, "I should have never said it." Not because she wanted him back, not because she thought it would change anything, but because it was the truth. And some truths don't fix the past. They just sit in the silence it left behind.